I think I need like some sort of outro music from the intro music. That cuts off very abruptly.
That works for me.
So,
It's event. It sounds like, Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. And then you
That's
pop in right after that. So.
we're here for the main stage show. Will be a good time. We already have it's hello my humans that are showing up in the chat. We have a wonderful, by we I mean me and my cats and my dog. We have a wonderful guest today, my friend and yours, Seth Andrews of The Thinking Atheist. So it always feels weird to thank someone for coming on after I've just been chatting with you for 50 minutes. But Seth, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for the invite. It's nice people to hang out and, try to. I think we're all coping. Like this is all like we're talking to the bartender. We're all in therapy trying to deal with the insanity of humanity. I don't know about you, but I log onto social media every day, and it's like that Picard meme that says "damage report."
Yeah,
what fresh hell awaits us every day, right?
Right. I'm pretty sure I wake up every morning. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night now, like it's it used to be go get stoned, get back to sleep. Now it's like wake up, check Twitter to see what happened in the death of democracy, because democracy is 3 hours ahead. Democracy is happening on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. Democracy has not caught up yet, and shit is happening already while I'm asleep. So somebody just said, Leah said those headphones are amazing. They were a lightning deal on Amazon, and I glitter glued the ears because I'm extra as shit. So look, I'm just saying, everyone needs kitty ear. Look, like my cats needed to know that I was a part of their tribe.
Oh,
you can't tell the difference. There's Oliver sighting bright and early, good time. So how have you been doing on surviving the downfall of everything lately? Like I don't even know where to start.
As far as COVID, I feel like I cheated a little bit because I already work from home, and I'm not. I mean, I like going out. I love going out to events and conventions, and I'm good in small crowds, but I'm not like an extrovert. Like I have to be around people or else. And so, COVID for me is, I'm still working at home, and we're playing some tennis outdoors. It hasn't been, it hadn't affected me as much as it has other people. I feel like I'm almost guilty for that. As far as everything else, I'm wondering how soon until the riots, until the election. And then hopefully he loses, and then he says, no, it's all fake. And then the MAGAs decide they're going to sort of protect him in the White House because he refuses to leave peacefully, and there's gunfire in the streets. I'm trying not to be that guy. Like, maybe that's hyperbole, but I can't help but wonder, like, everything seems to be stair-stepping up because the stuff that I thought was not possible 6 months ago, right? Oh, that'll never happen.
It's the stuff that you're like, we see that on the news from Eastern European countries that are about to have a coup. And that's what we need to understand, is that it doesn't just, it's not it's gonna happen here. Like, this is what I've been trying to kind of brace my audience for. I'm like, guys, I know I sounded crazy when I called them Nazis and concentration camps months ago, but now with the whole hysterectomies and the whole war in the street, see, it's a little bit, I wasn't that crazy. I'm just saying, I have not been too crazy most of this time.
I'm so naive. Back in 2016, when he lost the popular vote by 3.5 million, but got in anyway, I thought, well, this guy's going to be a clown show. And after 6 months, people are going to realize it was a huge mistake, or he's going to get frustrated and stomp off. He's just going to take his ball and go home. Right?
I sincerely hoped that he would pull a Sarah Palin and be like, I'm not retreating, I'm advancing towards the back of the room, or some way he would mangle the quote,
I thought for sure, this guy, he's not used to being challenged. So what's going to happen when he's not a dictator and he has to go and make compromises, and he has to appeal to a bipartisan Congress, et cetera. And none of that happened. The sycophants lined up, and the Republican Party completely lost its spine or sold its soul for power, and things just he is the enabling. I just finished Dr. Mary Trump's book, his niece's book.
I binged that one when it came out. She is number one. She's a great writer. She speaks so like you listen to her. I listen to the audiobook version because I'm what's the word, lazy. I'm lazy. She speaks so you listen to her talk and you're like you have Trump DNA.
Yeah, how'd that work? And to hear her sort of dissect and. I'm not letting Trump off the hook because of his formative years and because he had a sociopathic father who essentially encouraged in him the traits of
Yeah, I mean,
cruelty.
his
Right?
Fred Trump Sr. was kind of the original villain, and when Trump was a child, he could have been seen as kind of the victim of Fred Trump Sr. But he's an adult now, and we are all Fred Trump Sr.'s victims by proxy,
Yeah, we are.
unfortunately.
And
So
to see, there are scary people in this world. I've decided the scariest people for me are those who have no empathy. It's almost like watching Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, right? The guy who completely doesn't really feel the pain of his victims. He might even kind of enjoy it or be amused by it. He's like, that's interesting. Someone's in great pain. Those people I find the most terrifying in this world. And there's a lot of that in Donald Trump. And this idea that, not to get too philosophical, but I saw an article the other day.
Get philosophical, Seth.
That, there's this, especially where I'm from here in the Bible Belt, they talk about teaching your sons to be a man. Now, I'm going to get a lot of shit from people about, gender roles and whatnot. So please, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're essentially trying to tell your sons how to grow up to be noble.
Yeah.
And so what do we tell them? We tell them, well, tell the truth and stand by your commitments and don't be the bully on the playground that throws shit at somebody else, at the weaker person. Don't beat them up. Be the person who stands against the bully and you're the advocate for the little guy and respect women. And we tell them this is what manhood is. Somebody in this article said, by that measuring stick, Donald Trump is the least manly man who has ever been in the office of the presidency of the United States. And I agree with that.
Oh. That's accurate. There's been the phrase thrown around that the cruelty is the point. The whole everything he does whenever he's doing something mean, and someone goes, or whenever he's enacting a border rule or what, someone will come and say, why he could have just done it this way. There's a nice the same procedure or the same policy could have been done without all of the human carnage. The carnage is the point. He enjoys this part of it, or at least that's kind of what seems to be reported. But
not to belabor the politics, I know that everybody's weary, but there's another thing I think that's going on among the evangelicals. I think they are primed by their religion.
By that,
I think they're primed to respond to somebody who acts like a king. Okay. So you look at Donald Trump and you're like, he's not doing the president thing. He's acting like a king. The rules, screw it. I'll do whatever I want. I'm not accountable. I'm essentially a king. And so people who are primed, I think, for authoritarianism, especially if they believe that Donald Trump is a flawed man with, some character flaws, who's been anointed by God because God sometimes uses imperfect people, this rationalization they're doing.
Yeah,
I think they have been primed.
I feel like I've heard that entire exact rant. God's using an imperfect.
They have been primed by an authoritarian religious model to respond to authoritarians in their life. And so they see a guy who is a savior king figure, and they are just naturally lining up behind him like lemmings. I mean, how else do we explain people who are acting in contrast to the best teachings of Jesus Christ in their own Bible? I mean, that's the only way I can explain it.
It's strange. I mean, there are there are a lot of books written on why people lean towards authoritarian rulers, and it's funny because they find that people who do tend to lean towards more traditionalist or more right leaning politics do tend to in times of uncertainty, like we as started up around I'd say as started after 9/11. It's people who were Republican tended to get more and more authoritarian, or at least that's the trend that we saw was towards authoritarianism, because uncertain times we need a strong president to lead us. And that's kind of been a strange way that once upon a time we had, the left and the right they were two sides of the same coin. They were just,
yeah.
They might have had, both sides might have been, we just disagree on things, until all of a sudden the right took this really hard turn towards authoritarianism after somewhat of a cataclysmic event. Somewhat.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the future holds. I've never thought we'd get here. I mean, we've always
No.
had the anti-scientists, right? We've always had the pseudoscientists. We've always had the conspiracy nuts. But I mean, who'd have thought that we'd see QAnon supporters getting elected to public office?
It's what's worrisome is the person that won that primary. She's in a typically Republican district. Am I correct with that?
Yeah.
What's weird about that? Or okay, everything's weird about that. What's weirder about that is that she's going to be going to work with people who she believes sucks the adrenochrome out of children. So she's going to be going up to Nancy Pelosi, be like, "Look, I have this bill I want to propose, but also, where do you keep the children? Like, how does that? How do you do that? How could
I'm submitting legislation to outlaw the reptilians. Like, you know what I'm saying? How did we get here?
Like, and the worst part about that whole thing is watching people who are already in office, people who, okay, not that I would ever call Ted Cruz. I would never mistake Ted Cruz for a serious thinker. Let's not put words in my mouth. But like, these are people who are in office. These are sitting senators and congressmen who are tweeting things to kind of be like, "Hey, QAnon, I see you out there." I'm not saying the QAnon thing, but I'm saying a thing that lets you know, I see you. Mm-hmm. I want your sweet, sweet votes. Like, whenever they're tweeting something about hashtag save the children, like, these aren't people who got mad when they figured out, oh, marrying children is legal in the US. These aren't people who started a riot about dance bombs or toddlers and tiaras. But man, QAnon comes out and has control over a voting block, and they are all up in telling you that everything on the internet is porn.
So my 82-year-old mother. Now, she unfriended me on Facebook because she couldn't take it. She lasted 2 days, and then she unfriended me. All right.
I saw that you guys refriended. I didn't realize that.
No. We're not. Well, we invited them over for dinner the other night, and we managed to get through half the dinner before something awful came out of her mouth. But we're not friends on Facebook because the totality of my posts is, atheist, Democrat. I'm a 1-2 punch of evil. And so, but Natalie comes home and she's still friends with her. And she said, did you see what your mom posted on Facebook? And I'm like, no, I didn't see it. I'm not friends with her. She's like, oh, check this out. She pulls up her phone, and Mom posted that conspiracy theory that was a composite of, it was Fauci and Bill Gates roomed at Cornell as Bill Gates was developing the RF transmitter and the vaccine that did this. And then George Soros bought the company that gassed the Jews during the Second World War. And that company's major stockholder was Jeffrey Epstein before he died mysteriously in prison. I'm sure he was assassinated. And my mother posted this at the bottom, which is, I think, is a requirement for all conspiracy theories when you post them. It had in all caps, "Wake up, people, and do your research."
I'm sorry, that was just the capper on top of a mount. Like,
do your research.
That was like all of the bullshits had an orgy and just like came onto a meme, and that bit of conspiracy is what happened.
That's how it started. It started as satire. Some dude on Reddit said, all right, let's take all of the little conspiracy little things that are floating out in the ether.
You mean QAnon started as satire, or do you mean?
Somebody thought, let's grab all the major conspiracy names and let's just fabricate something. And then he posted something like, this is the kind of crazy shit that MAGAs believe. And he posted it. And the MAGAs read it literally and thought, oh, yeah. They began to share it as if it was fact.
So fun story about the nature of belief that you'll love this. I don't know if you're friends with him on Facebook or not. Do you know Z Wang? He is a geneticist and magician. He's either way in the skeptic movement. Anyways, I for some reason I thought he lived in your area, and I forgot the Midwest is big. I had that coastal mindset. I'm like,
you live in the Midwest. Do you know?
It's like, oh no, it's because skeptics that tend to congregate. But I was like, wait, no, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri are different states. That's embarrassing. But anyways, he went to a mentalist conference, and he's a magician. And he has a couple of tricks that I know the method behind them. And if you don't know what's happening, you think that he read your mind. You absolutely he shows up and asks you, name a person, color, whatever, and he pulls a piece of paper out of his pocket with all of the things written down that you just said, and you're like, what the fuck? Your sense of reality is shattered. So he's at a conference where a bunch of people think they have psychic powers, and there are people training you to find your psychic powers, and he's like, I'm a fuck with these people. So he gets up and, in the language that's been used by the people who are running the conference, kind of, starts saying, I think I have these. Anyways, he uses one of the tricks that I know. I'm like, yeah, if I was someone who was attuned to this, I would definitely believe he had psychic powers. And people started like following him around for the weekend. And at the end of it, he's like, and he realized at some point, if I was a bad person, I could use this and have this legion of people who believe for real that I have these psychic powers and have them follow me. But he told them at the end of the weekend, guys, I'm a magician. It's just a trick that I showed you. And half of them were pissed that he lied. And because how dare he give them this wonderful thing and take it away. And the other half were pissed because they knew he wasn't lying. Because, of course, he had those powers. They still believed in the Church of Z. They still believed in the Church. So I want to know if one day, because QAnon, the people who might be behind it, like Jim Watkins, and there was another guy out of fucking New Jersey. It's always a guy in New Jersey. Anyways, if we find out there are these random assholes on the internet, as Trump would have said it, just some guy who weighs 400 pounds living in his basement. Like, if we find out those are the guys who are running it, like, for sure, and there is no Q, there are still going to be people who believe in QAnon because they're like, nah, you can't tell me I know it's there, because they're so convinced that this is real.
I'm sorry you believe the government party line on QAnon is normally what I hear. I'm prepping. We do every October on my broadcast a ghost stories compilation, and we just tell different ghost stories of shapes, and a lot of them are based in folklore or real, quote unquote, real hauntings or real haunted houses. And there was a story about, I'm not spilling any beans here, but there's a story about this ghost story that and these two sisters went in and they conducted seances and talked to the ghost, and there were spirit wrappings on the door and all this other stuff. And decades later, at the end of their life, they sort of spilled the beans and they said, everybody, we made this up. We were faking it. Okay. But there actually was a culture of people that refused to believe these sisters when they themselves came forward and said, we were bogus, we were fake, we cashed in, it was all a lie. They had already bought into, they already had equity going on, with that particular narrative, and they refused to surrender it even when corrected at the source. I think that's always going to be the case with the conspiracy-minded and the ignorant, the gleefully ignorant, because they live in a culture of belief over knowledge. So it's true because I believe it, and I believe it because it's true. It's a vicious cycle. It's a hamster wheel of superstitious ignorance and pseudoscience that I think it's toxic, and it's only going to get worse, right?
It's kind of like they're looking at this thing saying, I know this is a table. You can tell them, no, this isn't a table. It doesn't have these four legs. Here are the reasons why this isn't a table. No, I'm telling you, this plank of wood is a fucking table. Once they're convinced of it, that's it. And it's strange. I mean, this is a kind of common thing with conspiracy theorists, where they believe multiple conspiracy theories that don't necessarily that like invalidate the other ones. And that is happening a lot with Q. And it's like, I didn't expect, you don't expect this to infiltrate mainstream politics. That's the weird part about this. Like, this is, it's kind of like, we go back, like, a lot of us have rewatched the movie Contagion an unhealthy number of times. And I never expected the Jude Law character to be the central character to this movie. Like, that has really thrown me about the current reality. Yeah. Like the role of the conspiracy theorist taking over.
Well, I think QAnon also serves another purpose. I was talking to John Musgrave. He's a Vietnam veteran. He was horribly wounded in Vietnam. And we had this conversation about war and protest as it relates to the 21st century, and how sometimes protesting your government is the patriotic thing to do. And there's this weird narrative among MAGAs that, my country, right or wrong, and to wave a finger of protest, especially during a time of military conflict, it's treasonous. It's a betrayal of the veterans. And he was like, no, I mean, if you see your country doing something wrong, the patriotic, the moral thing to do is to stand up. So we were talking about it in that context. But he was talking about the first guy he ever killed in Vietnam and how he was broken up by it. And he had to get through it by dehumanizing the North Vietnamese. So instead of being an NBA soldier, they called them all kinds of names, gooks and zips and everything else. And they made them things. They turned a subject into an object. We have seen the modern day Republican Party do this with their Democratic opposition, right? We are not simply people who disagree philosophically on things like the role of government, gay marriage, right to die issues, the legalization of drugs, et cetera, et cetera. We are not that. We are a cabal of satanic pedophiles who want to destroy Christmas, and we hate everybody, and we want to see the world burn. And so by othering us, by turning us in, by demonizing people like us, it serves their narrative, and it allows them to protect the awfulness of Donald Trump, because no matter how awful he is, no matter how toxic he is, at least he's not a Satan-worshiping pedophile who is bringing about the apocalypse. So it serves their narrative.
And if you push back on any of the things you're saying about QAnon, why are you against saving the children? Because they chose something so awful that if you're against their mission, obviously you're the bad guy. And it's almost like, I hate to say it, but it's brilliant strategizing for something so fucking horrible. But it's like, they just stuck their claim on, this is what you guys are, every single one of you. Like, I've been called a pedophile by a bunch of libertarians in the last week, and that's not a thing I expect. That was not on my 2020 bingo card. that was so far down on things to put onto my be called a pedophile by a bunch of randos on the internet for things I said about a movie.
I mean, if you think about the people who largely have been human rights activists, who have been protecting the bodily autonomy and the human rights of people, it hadn't been the Republicans. It's been more liberal people.
Yeah.
And, it's why once I left my religion.
Cue somebody telling you that Lincoln was actually a Republican, because words never change meaning in the English language.
Well, and parties never change. The Republican Party of Lincoln's time is not the Republican Party. It's been infected by the moral majority and the family research counter.
The Republican Party of Reagan's time isn't even the party of today. It's the party of Bush Sr. or Jr. isn't even the party that we're in right now.
So, look, you're a science communicator. I'm an atheist activist. I take shit every day for talking about politics. Why do you have to talk about politics? Why can't you stick to whatever? Some of that?
Yes. As I keep telling, I've definitely lost some followers because of that. Because they're like, and the funny thing is when they come on and they do a rant, and I've seen some of these rants on your wall too. They're like, "This is the last straw. I'm leaving. I came here for this. I need to speak to the management, Miss Cybabe." It's like, where's Miss Auntie Cybabe's management? I don't know why I'm making my hair fluff for that. It seems to work. Just I'm doing the angry Susan Collins. So it's just, oh my God. But like, they get very mad at some shit that I did when it comes to politics. Cause I had an opinion. I came here for science. Yes. Well, here's the problem. Politics, and this is how I tend to, one of my followers on YouTube just said, Cy Karen. Cy Karen is very angry. Cy Karen would like to speak to the manager. Oh God, that'll have to be a new character in a video series. Cy Karen! Yeah. Cy Karen! Anyways, where was I going with that?
You were talking about how you were told not to talk politics.
Oh yeah. So, but I always just say, it's like, look, politics hath stuck its dick in science. I did not go looking for this fuckery. They came looking for me. Okay. Yeah. I did not want to, I never wanted to say much about this election. I thought that this election was going to speak for itself. I was not planning on a pandemic. I did not think that science was going to drop this turd of a thing on my doorstep for the election and suddenly make science the SciComm be the thing that was necessary to get through this election. But it is, and I can't not talk about it. Not talking about it would be the irresponsible thing to do. And it's like, there are a lot of subjects socially that are far less completely connected to Cybabe that I think are important to talk about, even if they're not my main thing, because I think it's important when people quote look up to you, because people look up to me. I'm an influencer.
Well, they admire your work, and I get that.
But it's like, I think that when people look up to you for your opinions, for your thoughts on things, that you speak out when things are going this clearly horribly wrong, so that they know, like, you're on their side. You're you're in tune to the universe and whatnot, and you're paying attention to the things that might be affecting your listeners.
Yeah. Well, I think the question is, why do you have to talk about politics? And what I hear is, why do you have to speak to your values? And I'm like, well, on your page, you're speaking to your values and what's important.
Yeah.
Like you say, I didn't ask for the evangelical right to take over the American political system and essentially second class everybody who's a non-evangelical in this country. I didn't ask for that. And I certainly didn't ask for the insanity, the monumental ineptitude, predatory clown show that is Donald Trump. I didn't ask for any of this, but to not speak out about my values just seems crazy. And if it bothers you, you are voluntarily in my sort of online living room. You can hang.
Yeah.
Or if it bugs you, you got your own wall and knock yourself out. And I do enjoy the Shakespearean exits, though. I mean, I can no longer abide this. I'm sorry you're not skeptical about this.
And suddenly they get, like, their grammar gets so perfect as they're telling you to fuck off. Like, I love it when it's like, I forthwith am heretofore taking. Oh my God!
And then they lurk. And then they lurk, right? They're just in the periphery.
No. I do not let them. I ban them. Like, if you tell me you are leaving, I will show you the door. I'm not putting up with this. I am not.
But when you do that, then they find another way in, email or another inbox, and they're like, you are an opponent of free speech, and you just want an echo chamber, and you never want to be disagreed with. Like, for some reason, their toxicity has made them a free speech martyr, which to me is just absolutely laughable.
It's like, here's the thing: if they were advocating for free speech, if they wanted me to believe that these miscreants gave a shit about free speech, you know what they would have done? They would have all stood up for Kathy Griffin, who the Secret Service attempted to charge her with, or the Secret Service brought her in. She was going to be charged with for holding up a mask with ketchup on, and that was the photographer's idea, not hers. The photographer was charged with nothing. They tried to charge her with conspiracy to assassinate the President of the United States.
Back when I always thought that was like a paper mache head or something.
Yeah, it was a mask with ketchup on, just a plastic, like, one that,
So that was her free expression.
That's free. Like, all the people who, and I mean, I get it that is a jarring image to look at, and I get why some people would be mad. But you know what? There were tons of effigies of Obama and Hillary burned. This was obviously, Kathy Griffin is not going to, like, try to climb over the White House law. It's like, I feel like if you're going to find anyone who's going to be the person who's guilty of it, like, it's not going to be Miss Kathy Griffin.
She's not going to get a pilot's license and fly it into the White House. Yeah, that's.
She already drives a Maserati. She does not need to, like, she's got her shit going on. She does not need to get, like, one tweet. And, like, this is why I think that all these people who are like, I'm a free speech advocate, I'm like, all right, where were you when Kathy Griffin got in trouble for free speech? They're silence. The only one, and even though I have major issues with him, the only one of the people who kind of make a song and dance about their free speech advocacy who stood up for her was Bill Maher, actually. Surprisingly. So.
Yeah, Bill Maher, there's a lot I like, and there's a lot that frustrates me.
Yeah, like, I want to take him down and be like, you're wrong about vaccines. You're wrong about a lot of things about how the food system works.
Yeah,
it's stop yelling at the kids. You don't sound. This is not a good look.
Yeah.
His episode. Oh, did you? It's because I used to, like, listen to his show as a podcast, and, like, it's since COVID hit, because it's gone remote. Like, all the other late night comedy talk shows, they all, they just are doing their shows like YouTubers do. They're just sitting there talking to a camera. Bill Maher is the only one who got a laugh track, and I cannot stop. I can't not laugh at him for this. I'm like, your little tiny fucking ego.
You
what? Poor baby man. This is what's wrong with Bill Maher.
That's the equivalent of those little distracting cardboard cutout fans at the baseball games. Have you seen them? Like they show Major League Baseball, and right behind the ump and the catcher, you see all these little cardboard cutout spectators in the background, and it's so freaking distracting. And I think this is maybe they've done some sort of there's some psychology. Like if I see a human effigy that it isn't supposed to increase my enjoyment, to me it's just a punchline. I just find myself laughing out loud. So anyway, I digress.
Digressions. Look, this entire show is basically it's either me alone answering questions about COVIDs, and look, not much new is happening in the universe of COVID. We have a president who's handling it disastrously, illegally, poorly, and telling people I'm doing a fine job. 200,000 Americans have died. You have not done a fine job. You're an asshole. This is where we are, and we have to talk about the state of the world. So
plus, I have to remind myself that I think your whole life is off script. Like you are riffing and you're good at it.
You're very into you understand my id. This is why we get along. It's you sized me up perfectly.
Some people have that ability, it's like, honestly, it was like a little bit like being in radio. We always had the people who they would prepare every syllable that they said before they opened the mic and went live. And then there are other people who they have what we can call an excess of personality. And they just open the mic and they're just good. And I put you in the latter category. So
I have days where I stutter like it. I cannot stop stuttering, and it's like, okay, maybe there are words in there somewhere that people want to hear, but these are not them. And like it's funny because I have my podcast with Alice, and Alice is a very organized person, and I am not. And I don't know to what degree this frustrates her, but like she comes in and she has like some jokes that she's kind of prepared. I'm like, I'm going to bounce off whoever we have I'm going to bounce off you. I'm going to bounce off a guest, but like my everything for the podcast, like unless I see, because we're literally watching porn for the plot and making jokes about it. So like unless I see something, I'm like, oh, I have a great joke about that. Like I don't have anything written down going into it.
You just go with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's porn and we're making dick jokes. It's a very complicated setup. So
your resume, like when you walk in, if you ever walk in for a job interview for some other gig, I'd look forward to the look on the face of those browsing your portfolio.
So true story.
Okay.
So my headaches were really, really, really out of control like a year ago, and got them. They're for the most part managed right now. Just to update my viewers out there who are curious. I tried a new medication the last few weeks. I'm actually on a supplement right now for it. This really hard to manage headache that normally needs one of the strongest anti-inflammatories on the market is responsive to a supplement. Indian frankincense. It's called Boswellia serrata. So I'm trying that, and it seems to be working. I'm not sure if it's working as well as Indocin, but yeah, me, the supplements are bullshit person, taking a supplement right now to manage a really difficult to manage illness. There is your random
hashtag irony. Yeah, I got you.
Right.
Oh, man. Aren't headaches one of those things where like we only know how much we don't know? Like, there are certain types of headaches, but then there's this whole other spectrum where we're like, hell if I know. And so they're just throwing everything at them kind of deal.
We're getting better at it. So there are, and my listeners have definitely heard this rant before, but so there are a couple different kinds of headaches. There are the primary and secondary headache conditions. Primary are ones that they started out of nowhere. They showed up one day and congratulations, here's your baby. Secondary headache conditions mean they happen secondarily to something else. Like you had a head injury or you had a something happened that caused you to get these migraines. So there's, what I have is one of the primary headache conditions. So there are cluster headaches. There are there's trigeminal neuralgia. Then there is this tiny little subclass of the trigeminal autonomic cephalgias, and those have they're just a bunch of really rare headache conditions. The only way you can tell them apart is by treating them basically and figuring out which med they're responsive to. And so I have this 1 in a couple 100,000 headache. So I think now that I know which one I have a better deal than people who have just plain old migraines, because we know which med works on this at least. But yeah, headaches are just, it's compared to everything else I've dealt with. Cause I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. I have back issues. Headaches are way worse than all of them because you can't escape that pain. It's literally right there in your face.
Yeah, well, especially if you're doing life, you're doing creative work, you're doing relationships. I mean, the headache becomes
Yeah.
this sort of brick wall that you can't break through, you know?
Oh yeah.
I
Like
get that.
it's yeah, Derek knew me for it's the first 5 years we were together. I had a headache, and it's he said I was suddenly, it's like I was suddenly in a much better mood and much, happier, and it's like I was starting to like unlearn all the things I'd learned as kind of like defense mechanisms for, I'm in pain and I don't want people around me. And that takes a while to like get less agoraphobic, and all of a sudden the world shuts down. Literally, it was September when my headaches got solved last year when I finally got.
Now we're all in an isolation tent with plastic all
Yeah.
around us, and
I
yeah.
was like, I'm gonna go out and just take on the world. No, a couple people are asking what headset this is. I will throw the link. It's one that I got on Amazon for like $35. It was marked down from like 50-ish, which was great. So I just look, it was cute and it had kitty ears. So it's which I took, I definitely, but not but I took a. This is how I know I'm still 12. I took a hot glue gun to decorate those. Like I just.
I
You
like
got
it.
it. You
I
got it.
like it.
You got to
It's
keep.
very you.
You
It's
got to
very
keep a little bit of that of that. I might still be a 12-year-old energy somewhere in there,
I
but
think,
that's.
life is so serious and things are so, I think frivolity, Natalie calls it bubblegum for the brain. Everybody
I
needs
like it.
bubblegum for the brain. You need something that's kind of dumb and happy and distracting, and no matter how old you are, no matter where you are, I think
Yeah.
everybody kind of needs something like that. So,
It's that, and we're kind of in this current shit show. So we need, it's anything that I can do that distracts me from the fact that just
yeah,
all of this is happening
yeah.
is it's kitty ears. They'll do it. So oh, it's hold on, just quick note. Psy Mom has entered the chat. We have our usual, we have a couple of things that happen every live stream. One is that my mom shows up in the chat and I just announce it. Don't worry, nothing weird. You continue as is happening before. You're looking at me like, what the fuck,
You
Yvette?
must be very proud. She must
It's
be very proud.
it's look, my mother knows that I have a podcast in which I discuss the plot lines of pornos, and she has not disowned me. So that's
Like,
that's the thing that
I
happened
grew up
too.
in such a Puritan environment. Like I mean, it was really hardcore fundamentalist. Like there was never a beer in the fridge. Nobody, mom would swear like once every 6 months. And what would happen, you could tell this was the word, these were the words she really secretly down deep, if she was being honest with herself, the words that she wanted to use, but knew that civilized people do not. So whenever she would swear at us, and we'd drive her crazy to the point where she'd finally snap and go, shit, or whatever would pop out of her mouth. And her face would twist up like one of those trees in The Wizard of Oz. It was awesome.
Oh my
And then we would
god.
always laugh and carry on. And then she'd be like, that's just terrible. That's just terrible. And it was just this weird Puritan environment where everything was wrong or morally dubious or evil. No rated R movies, no this, no that. It's just one of those things. And so to be on the other side of that and to look back and to see how judgy that whole culture was in response to just life stuff that everybody else is doing. It's a weird social experiment, it's very freeing when you're not walking around essentially passing moral judgment on consenting adults who are doing whatever adults do. It's very freeing to be able to do that.
Right. Oh, just a quick note. So, looking over at the chat, a lot of people are commenting on your very sexy, very smooth radio voice, sir. And just to let you know, I respect you for your personality for who you are as a person. I only hear gravel in your voice, and I put up a wall of not hearing any sex in your voice, sir.
It's all done with machines. I actually sound like Gilbert Gottfried, and so by the time it all comes out on the other side, it's like
I too sound like Gilbert Gottfried. I'm just putting this on for now. So.
It's funny, when my voice changed, I was kind of a communicator in school. I was always doing this anyway, and I think it was my father. My dad is deaf, right, but he didn't ever learn how to sign because his generation.
Just that depresses me, knowing that he doesn't know how good his son's radio voice is.
Well, he came from that generation where, there was a stigma, like you're deaf, you're a part of the deaf world, and so he refused to learn how to sign. So he became a lip reader, and so growing up, we all had to sit around the table and we had to learn how to communicate, how to use economy with your words. We had to open our mouths. You couldn't mumble or we couldn't understand you. And in this weird sort of twisted way, I feel like his disability actually caused me to sort of try to train myself to be a better communicator. And before I knew it, I was that nice young man with the deep voice who could spin a few sentences together. And I'm on stage doing church work, telling people about the good news of Jesus. And then
this is such a good segue to talking about your book and to talking about Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian.
I'm ashamed.
It's here's the thing. I think this is a timely book for. It's not that I think people who are Fox News Christians currently are all readers, as we would say. I say this. Look, we got to not paint with a broad brush. I know I'm saying some jokes at some people's expenses, but it's here. I think something like that would be good for someone whose parents have perhaps been lost to Fox News, and they're trying to figure out how did somebody else get out of it? What can I do to perhaps pull my loved ones on out of there? So how did you go from being from how deeply entrenched of a Christian Fox News guy were you? Let our audience know.
I don't know how much to admit. I've talked about it a little bit on the radio.
Tell it all.
But I was that guy. Like Republican good, Republican God. Democrat bad, Democrat devil. It was just that easy.
Man.
And it's this weird tribalistic thing where the Republicans, they honor the flag. Democrats, they burn the flag. Republicans honor our veterans. Democrats kneel during the pledge. They won't stand for the veterans. Republicans we know that America is the greatest nation in the world. And Democrats don't think so. And
Democrats want us to be Venezuela.
Yeah. I mean, it was very much this sort of us versus them kind of thinking. A lot of it filtered through a biblical worldview. I believe that the United States was founded by these sort of pristine Christian men. Of course, I hadn't done any.
Wow.
I hadn't even read my own Constitution. I didn't know anything about the founding fathers. And so I was that guy. I watched Fox. I loved Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity. I read Ann Coulter.
What did you think of Rush Limbaugh? Were you also like a Rush Limbaugh? Oh, Seth,
I was. Michael Savage, Glenn Beck. I was that guy.
Man, look. Hey, we are not here to. This is not the crucifixion of one Mr. Seth Andrews. This is the resurrection.
It's brutal. And that is an echo chamber. What happens is you end up in the car for half an hour at a time. And by the time you get to wherever your destination is, you are convinced that despite the fact that you have more freaking privilege than pretty much almost anybody else in the world, you are under attack and they're just over the hill and they're coming for you and they're going to take your God and they're going to take your guns. My dogs are barking.
Right. We should have a Linus and Buddy and Buddy little meetup on the screen. It was requested in the chat. People were like,
they heard something somewhere. I don't hear the garage
There's
door.
A leaf moved 3 blocks away and you must know, Father. You must know.
My cat will set him off because cat will walk around the kitchen and just wail, for no reason. So that sets him off. I don't know. But anyway, I would get out of the car and I would already be convinced that they're going to strip away everything that is good. And they hate God and they hate Christmas and they hate America. I filtered everything through that. And it took me getting rid of my religion in 2007 before I was able to reevaluate my political beliefs.
It was only 2000. I say that, and I know 2007 I was in grad school, so that's like an entire adult lifetime ago. But it seems like it just seems like you've been it feels like you've been eternal in the atheist community. You are Alpha, Omega, and God of atheism. At least you have the voice of. If we needed a voice of God, your smooth radio.
I've been around for a little while. Yeah.
You're like, I'm not that old, Yvette. God.
All I can hear is dogs barking. I'm working the volume just a little bit.
I'm at this
stage where there's sort of these new up and comer, and I love them. They become dear friends, atheist YouTubers, and there's sort of this next generation that's coming up. So I find myself in this weird spot where I've only been doing this for 11 years, but I'm kind of that guy. Like oh, Seth's been around forever, which I guess it's all relative.
It's So I've been around since 2014. So I guess I've been around for like half of eternity now. It's weird to like now I see people that are coming up and starting and doing their writing, and it's like, all right, now I need to learn from the kids so that I can stay relevant. Also, I don't know what they're saying anymore. They're using all these words like smash and I don't understand how the kids are talking with their hippity hop. So that's just.
I don't, and I do find a little bit of that, where I'm kind of the old guard. And so how long until I become that guy? Oh, look, he's like Obi-Wan living off in the cave, and we'll go visit him every 18 months when we need sage wisdom about something, and then we'll leave him.
It's the way that I know I've gotten a little old is that I'm at the last app that I've chosen to make myself understand, which is Instagram. So when TikTok and Snapchat showed up, I was like, no, fuck you. Like, especially with Snapchat, I'm like, I will send a picture to the wrong person. I will send, it's like this, all these pictures, just fuck you. It's the internet. Everything is permanent. Everything is permanent.
Like, I don't get Instagram. Like, I've got Facebook and I can share Facebook photos. Why do I need Instagram? Instagram is all photos.
I like it because that's I think where people keep their digital photo album. Like I when I want to get away from everyone fighting, I go to Instagram, and that's where people just show you their life, and instead of try to argue about their life, unless you go to fitness Instagram. In that case, there's a whole lot of art. Like, man, it's so fun story. Fun, just completely random thing that I have to kvetch about because this happened yesterday and I'm still not over it.
She's riffing. Go ahead. I gotta hear this.
I need someone to look. This is what I needed. I need someone to narrate my thoughts. No, someone who I met via the evidence-based science and fitness community is selling detoxes now. And it's like, man, this was like when I met you were a fan of mine specifically because I debunked this stuff, and your whole business now is getting people signed up for your 12-day detox programs. I'm just, it's just to watch. Like, so it's like I see people like you who, get away from the bullshit, and it's like, it warms my heart. And then I see people who I know who found the evidence and were like, I'm running in the other direction.
We did a whole show on freaking Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean, she is a symptom of she is a black light on the rest of the culture, because while they're busy calling Fauci an idiot, they then hear Gwyneth Paltrow talk about sticking rocks in their vaginas, and they're like, here's my $65. Yeah. I literally think to myself, bring the killer asteroid. We do not deserve to survive the zombie apocalypse. We have not earned a place in the future. And I don't know, as long as there are entertainers who are selling health. I mean, I don't know do you ever watch that show, The Doctors?
I have a doctor's story. I was invited onto The Doctors after my first video of me downing a bottle of homeopathic sleeping pills. It went viral, and they're like, "Come on our show. We love what you did." They did not love what I did. They hated what I did, and they wanted to tell me why it was dangerous and wrong that I showed that I put that out. Like, it's. And then I found out.
Did they broadcast it? Did you make it to air?
The clip ended up getting cut. Now, here was the weird part. The clip ended up getting cut. I find out later on that the guy who runs The Doctors is his name is Big Tree Delray or Delray Big Tree, something like. Either way, his name is Big Tree. He's an asshole. Okay, he's an anti-vax. He's a professional anti-vax asshole. Okay, and he's the producer on this show. And I'm like, how did I not know The Doctors was a bullshitish show? When I went on, they told because they were like, yeah, we love that you debunked this thing. This is great. And they were dicks when I was on there. But
wait, so The Doctors, it was run by some kind of Andrew Wakefield type?
It's Del Bigtree. That's his name. He is I want to say he produced Vaxxed. Yeah, he was also in Vaxxed, and I love that in Vaxxed he calls himself a medical investigator or an investigative medical journalist or something like that. I'm like, dude, you were a television producer. You're not a journalist. You've never been an investigative anything. You've never been a medical anything. You had a couple doctors in the office, and the way they did Baxter was just like, I have words. Like they make it, of course, sound like they showed this convincing evidence to these doctors, and they don't tell the people that these are the guys who wrote like the anti-vax books. So very easy. Very easy.
I love when TV doctors show up wearing scrubs. I get that you're selling image and whatnot, but it's almost like whenever you see the people who are endorsing a specific medicine on commercials, and they've always got that damn white jacket with the stethoscope like hanging around their neck because, well, if they didn't have that, you wouldn't know they were a doctor.
How could that dentist possibly recommend that gum without a stethoscope around their neck, Seth? How could they?
Did you see Plandemic? I didn't see it. Did you see Plandemic?
You know what? I decided after, because I was planning on ripping it apart. Like that was my whole plan, was I'll watch it, I'll record, it's like I could not make myself. I got through 5 minutes and I'm like, no, and it was beginning of the apocalypse. Like how many months ago was that? Like that was like maybe April, or we were at stage 1 of apocalypse, and I was already like, no, but like, because so many people had already written. It was hard to find a copy of it. So many people had already written up a review of it by the time I found a copy. I'm like, I don't know if there's even anything that people will get that's helpful out of me doing, torturing myself with this thing that's clearly bullshit. And it was like, it felt like there was more conversation about Plandemic than people actually discussing what happened in it. Because if people were discussing what happened in that movie, then they would have gotten no traction because it was so bullshitish. It was so bad.
Like, all right, you and I are armchair psychologists for 10 seconds.
All right.
Why do you think people are attracted to these sort of wild, everything is a sinister plot kind of stories? I mean, you ever wonder why people gravitate to that?
I've seen a few things speculating on it, and I think it's when something big and bad happens, like huge world event like 9/11, like this, like what, any of the big things that present a lot of instability to the world, people are like, that couldn't have just happened. That there's no way something that fucked up my universe that badly just happened. So they go hunting for a reason, for anything that they're not being told. And so that's how they kind of find it, that's how people fall into these kind of nutty conspiracies first. It's like, they want to believe a comforting story that the world is controlled, and somehow that comforting story that the world is under control is crazier than anything about, sometimes random shit happens.
Yeah. I don't know. I hear a lot of that. 9/11 is a great example. I get so much shit from people for saying 9/11 was carried out by Islamic terrorist extremists. And we can get into the politics, we can get into the decades of history, the precursors to 9/11 and what we've done in other Middle Eastern countries, et cetera. But for some reason, they are married to this narrative that the second most incompetent president in our lifetime was somehow, and his entire government, part of a giant blood for oil conspiracy to knock down our own towers and Building 7 and thermite and steel beams and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, when I say, sorry, this has been examined and debunked. Well, I'm sorry that you can't be skeptical about 9/11. It's the first thing out of their mouth. And there's this gravitation back to, I'm sorry you believe the government party line. It's this distrust. And I understand some of it. But conspiracy thinking, those of us in the skeptical community, we realize that quote unquote skeptics are not immune from it. Right?
No. I've seen the craziest thing I've seen in the last 4 years have been people who have turned into Republicans during the Trump administration, atheists specifically, who have turned into during the
what? Like, did you get a reasoning for it?
I'm not exactly sure, and it's because I know who some of these people are. I don't want to go too hard at them.
Okay,
but
I got you.
It was it's surprising, and it makes you go, I thought that I understood certain things about you, and I was wrong. Like I posted this on my personal Facebook yesterday. It's like, when Trump first got the nomination, remember when Republicans were freaking out too? They were panicking because oh God, they were panicking for a lot of reasons. And I thought we were all panicking for the same reasons. I was wrong in that assumption. They were panicking because they're like, we're going to lose power forever. And I was panicking because I was like, he's going to kill us all. And they're like, oh, it's cool. We're going to keep power and we're going to kill the right people. It's we had
Oh God, that's a
we had very
poster.
different concerns.
I was
Apparently,
I'm in strawberry red state, Oklahoma. We're back to politics. Go figure. So
I don't. I was
I'm
going to
out.
bring us back there eventually. So
I'm out
don't worry.
walking Linus, and we're walking the neighborhood, and we do our little circuit. And Trump had just done his Tulsa rally, the one that was poorly attended, which
Oh
was
yeah, how
essentially a
far is
petri
that?
dish.
How far is that from you? Because you're
About 20 minutes from
oh
here.
Jesus.
So I'm walking, and it's, I don't know, it's 10 o'clock at night, end of the day, and this van pulls up to someone's house just up the road, and out pops a Republican Party convention. I mean, they all had the MAGA shirts, and they had hats,
Oh
they
my
had
God.
flags. It was wild.
Wow.
And they'd obviously just come from the rally.
Oh shit.
And so I'm walking Linus, and I had that cost benefit discussion under my own skin, and I almost shouted from across the street, "Was the Kool-Aid delicious?" But I did not do that.
Because you like living.
Because I knew I had to live next to these people, and I'm sure they would talk shit about me on the HOA page, whatever. But I had that.
The other thing is, it's Oklahoma. They're probably armed. Like, let's be honest. They'll be like, I felt my life was in danger. Linus was a vicious pit bull.
I felt threatened. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Don't worry.
Well, this is very much a gun culture. Now, I got a couple of pistols, and I'll go target shoot from time to time. But, I talk about this in Confessions, that guns are not part of my identity. Like,
yeah, I don't understand that. Like, taking a thing that's supposed to be either for procuring food, for protection, or for like, I can't. What else are you using it for? Like, people use that for a big part of their identity. I don't understand it.
It's weird. It's part of it's phallic, I think. I think part of it is, what did the NRA tweet today? They called them.
Oh God, I haven't even seen it.
They called bullets like freedom nuggets or something. It wasn't nuggets. It was something along those lines. That freedom something.
Freedom nuggets.
No, hang on.
Wow.
Hold on. This will take me 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Hang on.
If so, I'm surprised no one in the chat's gotten it.
I can't leave.
We can't.
Freedom
nuggets.
Freedom seeds.
Freedom seeds.
They said ammo sales are up 139% because, of course, if we lose the election, the Democrats are going to come and take away your guns because, of course, they're coming. They're going to take away everything that you love. 8
years of Obama not taking a single fucking gun.
There are more guns.
Not even joking about taking it. Not even proposing taking a gun.
There are more guns than people in this country.
Yep.
And we've got, we obviously have a serious gun problem. And I think part of it is that there is this narrative that guns are linked to American liberty and freedom. And so if you take the gun, you take the freedom. And this has been a successful narrative that's been spun by the cult of the NRA for the last, 30 plus years. And part of me is like, how in the world do you think the founding fathers would have felt about linking the Constitution that they fought and died for to help create was linked to the AR-15, right? Back when they're shooting guns, you're stuffing it with a wad of paper, loading a round a minute.
Give me a moment. I'll get my next shot off in the next thing. Yeah, they had muskets. It was a little.
Yeah,
here's the thing: the word it says the right to bear arms. It says the right to bear arms in the Constitution, and arms is short for, of course, armaments. It's not short for firearms because firearms is once again short for armaments. So the First Amendment doesn't technically rule out being able to own a tank because a tank is an armament. So. Yeah. I'm just saying, when people are like, no, when they said armed, we absolutely know they meant anything that you could hold in your hand and use as a transport. Like, what? Can't we? Like, I thought the word amendment literally meant, we had some other thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, how is that?
There is, I just totally lost my train of thought too. Don't you hate that when you start a sentence and then you just go off into Gumby land? It just totally happens.
The worst for me is like, I'll interrupt myself. Like, I'll be like, yeah, I'm having this great thing that I'm talking about. And then, other story. Wait, back to this. Oh shit. Where from whence I came.
One of my favorite, like even the militias of back right after the founding, they were accountable to the United States government. And of course, this was right on the heels of our liberation from Britain. I mean, it was a hugely tumultuous time. My favorite is these militia types today that on one side of their mouth, they're like, this is the greatest country on the face of the earth, right? So we're the greatest. We're number one by virtue of
On the other
declaration.
side,
they're like, we have to stockpile weapons in case our government turns on us. And I'm like, well, hang on just a second. Are we the most wonderful, worthy nation in the world and we're amazing?
But then there's the third side of their mouth from whence they are saying we have to protect the police, which it's if you have a chance, Dan Keeling just commented, Cybabe is enjoying her right to bear arms. Indeed, I am. These guns don't run. Moving on. But what was I saying before I so
You were talking about protecting the police.
Yeah. So there was this great bit. Are you familiar with the historian Tim Snyder? He's written some really some books that have gotten me through this. There's one book, I think it's on surviving tyranny. That it's I'm mixing up the title of his two books, but one of them it talks about the rules for getting through this and our descent into authoritarianism. And one of the things that it says is when the militias and the police start working together, shit is over. And how many times have we seen before these protests videos that people have gotten of the militias, the right wing militias, just talking strategy with the police?
Yeah. Well, as I wrote about in my book.
So let's chat a little bit more about that. So just a quick aside. So for a while, I got flack from a couple of our fellow skip to atheist friends for still being friends with you because apparently you had not immediately called Trump a Nazi on day one of his administration. I'm not sure. Here's the thing: I'm not sure the exact thing that happened that made people mad because look, it's been a long 4 decades this week. I'm not up on things, but everything I see on your timeline now is fuck this guy. We need to get Biden in there. And it's funny because you were fine taking flack from people when you were like, look, I'm just not willing to call him a Nazi yet. I'm going to bring you there. We'll get you there. But it's and now that you're pointing out that he's a bad guy and we need to have him not be president, you're having people who are like, well, you've gotten political now.
Yeah. Well, I always hated the guy. I mean, I honestly was astounded that he came to power. I had been doing some research. Tony Schwartz wrote Trump's Art of the Deal. He ghost wrote it. And so in the wake of the 2016...
Waiting to find out that you got to be best friends and learned everything.
Election. I mean, he comes forward and he's like, hey, I wrote Art of the Deal and we just made this shit up because we were selling books and I thought it was harmless. Well, I had no idea that decades later he was going to be a candidate for president. I mean, you people need to know, danger, we got a problem. Yeah. And I'm sounding the alarm and whatnot. I was hesitant. And I remain hesitant to use the word Nazi in certain contexts. I think Trump is just a straight up sociopath. I think he is a malignant narcissist and a predator and all of these horrible things. But what I was seeing was this sort of blanket blaming of everybody who was conservative, because I know a lot of people where I call it the place in the brain where the weird shit lives. And they rationalized that, well, I'm only going to vote on the abortion issue. And so since Trump is that guy, I'm going to sort of blank out everything else and I'm voting only because I'm against abortion.
And they just forget about everything else.
They you know what? Republican good, Democrat bad. It was that easy for them because it came down to what they felt like was the protection of life, or they bought into the NRA bullshit about freedom seeds and they didn't want to lose their guns, right? So it became about the guns. So I think people vote and act for a number of different reasons, but we do see a lot of similarities. As Trump himself is now saying that if he loses the election, he won't accept the loss because it's bogus and he won't go quietly or peacefully. That's straight up totalitarian shit. That is the stuff of totalitarian dictatorships and tyrants.
And this is something that it's weird to bring up Bill Maher twice in a live stream, but we're bringing up Bill Maher again because he had a good point of this going back over a year now. Every single candidate who came onto the show, he asked them the same question. If you win, what's your plan to get Donald Trump out of the White House? Because you're going to need a plan because he's not going to leave peacefully. Because everyone who's worked with him has said this, like Michael Cohen has said the same thing. I believe other former associates of his that have had the courage to get the fuck out of there have said the same thing. He's not going to just walk away. And he's said as much out loud now. And like, it's frustrating having arguments with people who support him about these things, because out of one side of their mouth, they'll try to argue for his position. And then out of the other side of their mouth, they'll try to say, oh, he was just joking.
Yeah. Well, I myself, we're looking at a man who, if you were to sit him down and ask him, is there any moment in your life when you were wrong? I'd like to hear him answer the question.
He would say no.
Right. He's like, no one knows more about everything than me. And there are montages online that you can see of him saying no one knows more about clean energy or nuclear power or
the military, and
he knows more than the generals. He knows no one knows.
And then you see all the mistakes he's made in a montage.
You see him standing at the 2016 convention with his arms out and says, I alone can fix it, which means that millions of people bought the line or abided the line that out of 300 plus million Americans, he was the only one who was able to fix what was a broken. Talk about an authoritarian model, a savior model, which again ties into religious thinking in many ways. And so now I am genuinely scared. What happens if his vote count and electoral vote count is in the negative on November 3rd, that night, and he says, I'm not leaving? Does he try to mobilize the military, and what do the generals do?
That's been my big question. Like, and I've said this over and over again, and and I've gotten response similar to what you would have said probably 2 years ago. That wouldn't happen here. And my question is always, what happens when Donald Trump orders the American military to fire on American citizens who, some of them will probably say no. Some because soldiers get very different training from police officers. So there will be some that will say no. There will be some that will abandon, but a lot of them are going to follow orders. And I'm not saying that as a thing to denigrate the military. I'm saying that because that's what's historically happened.
Forgive the interruption. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
This is what happens when you put two hosts on the same stream. We're both hosting. Sorry about that.
It's wonderful. I feel I'm learning as I go.
Whatever. There are an increasing number of military and former military. There is such a thing. I mean, they're military people who have come forward and said, "This is not America. This is not what we fought for. This is not what we stand for." Is it Military Veterans Against Trump or something? There's an organization. They post videos with testimonials from people in all four branches of the armed forces saying this is not America.
Groups that are like former Republicans against Trump, like all of them. Just
other people who formerly served in his cabinet, they were there when he was berating the generals, calling him weak. A 5-time draft dodger is calling our generals weak, and people say he's pro-military. I mean, there have got to be some people who are integrated into the United States military, shot callers who would simply scoff at any command to go after the citizens.
I hope so. The question is, like, at the end of the day, the question is, do they agree with his more radical stances on things? Do they agree with the kinds of things that Stephen Miller and what's his face, Gorskon, I'm not sure what his name is. The other guy who's an actual fucking Nazi in the administration. Like, it's the one who's like, it's like I'm like, I know it's not Gorski because I know a doctor named Gorski, but it's something.
I follow him on Twitter.
I'm mixing up, but it's like it's something Sebastian Gorska. I'm not sure what it is, but like it's like you don't know which like there's policy coming out of this administration from actual fucking Nazis, and like you don't know who in there supports that kind of stuff. So that's
well, and it's weird. We're in the post
Sebastian Gorka. Someone just commented. Sorry, thank you.
We're in the post-truth era, right? It was like when Trump's like, "What you are seeing and what you are reading is not what's happening." And of course, I have to jump back to Orwell, right? The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. And when we live in the truth of the moment culture, where it is true in the moment by mere virtue of declaration, that's a terrifying place to be. And so what happens when millions of Americans who are following the savior then are commanded by the savior to do what now? I mean, you talk about Nazi Germany. I mean, it sounds like hyperbole. Everybody's like Godwin's law. You invoke Hitler.
You know what? Mike Godwin, who originated Godwin's Law, he follows me on Twitter, and he said, "Nah, it's fine. These guys are Nazis."
Well, the parallels are too great to ignore, you know. And back to your earlier question about whether or not I'm not a good skeptic or a good humanist because I didn't call him a Nazi at the beginning. I think if someone has come to the point in their lives when I am the villain in their story, that they are reaching pretty far back into the inventory of villains, right? I mean, I'm the designated driver for the whole goddamn movement. So the idea that
your Uncle Seth, the good, wise, and calm.
I've made my mistakes. I sometimes I have bad ideas, but at the end of the day, I'm a teddy bear. I love people. I just think if I'm the villain in your story, how desperate are you for a villain? You know?
There were people that were like looking for people to purge, I think, from the movement, and I'm like, look, I'm waiting for them to say it straight out, or for them to I'll look for a dog whistle, or for someone to throw out a thing that makes me go, there's an issue here, not for someone who's just, I don't want to call him a Nazi yet. It was weird the amount of flack I took. And in personal conversations, a few people were going through people who were being shitty in the movement. And someone mentioned, I'm like, really? Seth Andrews?
I'm sorry. I failed your purity test. The truth is, if you're looking for perfection, you are not going to find it. You're going to find a flawed, but it's interesting when you find there is a culture that exists, I think, that is not interested in intent. What they do is they see an action, and whatever they feel like is the result of the action or word, that's the only thing that matters. And there then can be no conversation. So I'm thinking about, and I won't name names, but I've had some issues with people who are friends and activists who've said some stuff and done some stuff, and I'm like, that's problematic. And I've reached out to them personally, and I'm like, this concerns me. And we have a conversation about it, and we may even strongly disagree. But at the end of the day, I know that they believe they're doing the right thing, and we end up, we were still friends. We haven't othered each other in that way. Yeah. And I think that's becoming a lost thing. I think now the Twitter call out.
The disagreements have gotten different. I've stayed friends with some libertarians. I've stayed friends with people who I have some disagreements. But when the disagreements political are on, should we be giving hysterectomies to women trapped in concentration camps? That's not a political disagreement anymore. These stopped being merely differences of opinion on what the marginal tax rate over $80,000 a year should be. These are not political disagreements. These are moral disagreements. And
mine are more about tactics. I think the conversations we have are about how are we going to change the culture? And how far do you go, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, a lot of that. But it's interesting because I have found myself more and more becoming, I'm less patient with people. I think I posted the other day, if you are here on my Facebook wall and you are actively going to vote against the rights of LGBT people and to enable Trump to continue to stack the courts, and you're going to put us in danger with from within and the rest of the world, and you're going to other immigrants, and you're going to do all this, and you're going to make non-Christians, including atheists, second class. If you're going to do that, you can take a dump in your own living room. You do not get to shit in my living room, and I get to decide how much of you I tolerate. And I've shown people the door. Bye. I just don't have the time for you, and I think that's just fine. I don't have to sit here and listen to you.
I like that you didn't have to say if you're planning on voting for Trump. You just said if you're planning on voting in a way that, and everyone knows exactly who you.
It's like going on talking to someone and saying he tweeted something awful. You don't have to ever say who it is. Everybody, even the Republicans, know. Oh, Trump, he tweeted something awful.
It's how you ever, whenever you click, because I open up Twitter first thing in the morning to find out what the news is, which is totally a responsible thing to do for my mental health. But I'll open it up to see, what's happening. And you'll see a random word like lamp trending, and you're like, what the fuck did Trump tweet? Whenever it's something just completely random or slightly misspelled, you're like, what did asshole tweet this morning? And that's never been I get it that Twitter was not really, it only really started during the Obama administration, but it's never been a thing before where it's like you said with Picard, wake up, damage report every single fucking day. It's exhausting.
One of my recent favorites was that Biden is going to hurt God. I mean, that to me is
You give Biden that much credit?
That is an astounding statement. All right, God is going to be harmed by Biden. Apparently, has powers.
Well, I'm going to get canceled for this, but I'm going to say the joke. Anything? Wait, what do you think happened to his wife and kid? And you can cancel me if you need to call the manager of Miss Cybabe. God, I don't think Biden is powerful enough to harm God. Like, no, I hope he manages to maybe get more people covered on the ACA. Like, and I don't give him that much. I just think he's not going to be Trump, and then we can maybe manage to steer the bus in another direction. But
I myself find, first of all, there is a culture of people that they don't buy the lesser of two evils argument, which I'm like, one evil can be a lesser evil, right?
Yeah.
There's a sticker I saw that was posted online, and it said, okay, fine, Biden, but this is bullshit. That's kind of how I feel. Okay?
It's like he was my bottom three out of like other than the also rans, the ones that I'd never heard of before. He was my bottom three that I'm like, I have no desire to but like, you know what? Let's have adult chat. Let's be calm about this. You know what? He's been well respected when he worked as VP. He was well respected around the world. He did a lot of diplomacy work, and I think that will be helpful going forward. And also Kamala this is something that it surprises me. It shouldn't surprise me that people don't know this, but like Kamala's record when she was a senator was the only was very far to the left. It was only the only person who was further to the left than Kamala was Bernie Sanders.
Well, and people like to go back to her, her law profession and say, well, she did this, well, she did that.
She was a prosecutor and she prosecuted. That's what you do when you're and here's the thing. You'll hear people, you're going to hear mixed reports no matter what. Someone's going to try to say she's a cop, she's a cop, she's a cop. She was never a cop. She was an attorney general. She was a prosecutor. Those are very different things. And I'm can we please look at her record in the legislature? Because that's probably more reflective of how she'll work in the executive branch than how she was working as a lawyer.
And if you look at, and let's call it in terms of party, I mean, there's one party that's being overrun by the evangelicals. There's one party that's going to essentially legislate a religion and their quote unquote values. I mean, if I look at in terms of party, I mean, which party is going to champion LGBT rights? Which party is going to not put immigrants in cages? Which party is going to protect a woman's reproductive choice? This is a no-brainer.
I'm terrified right now, but after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died last week, this was really it's upsetting. Like, right, I had Andrew Seidel on the podcast last week, and of course he's lawyer, is very connected in DC. And 15 minutes before the podcast start, we just got onto chat to start warming up and chatting and whatnot. And he says to me, just to let you know, 1 minute ago Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. I'm like, and we had to, with that information, we had to start the show. It's like, but looking at that now, the people who are like, nah, I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils. All right, so there is a tiny shot that we can hold off on them getting somebody nominated and confirmed before the election. I'm just saying 6-3 is going to be bad. 7-2 is going to be worse.
And most of them Catholic. Like Andrew Seidel had posted that chart, and it's like Catholic, practicing Jew, Catholic. I mean, it's really overwhelming. And I'm like, okay, fine.
That is really weird.
26% of the American population has been measured to be statistically non-religious, not necessarily atheist, but non-religious. Yeah. A quarter of Americans. And yet, where is the representation in the courts and in public office? It's still just about career suicide for a politician to say they're non-religious.
Why do you need representation if you don't believe in anything? Why do you need representation? There are 7 states where there are still laws on the books where atheists can't hold office. Now, technically, there have been federal judgments that have said yes, atheists can obviously hold office, but there's been very little will to remove those laws from the books. So when people say, "Yeah, there can't be any sort of prejudice against it," yeah, there's codified prejudice written into certain states' legal structure that you cannot even represent yourself if you don't share some belief in God.
Wrote about in my book, available now at sethandrews.com.
It's a link to the Amazon page in the description. No, I linked to it in the show notes.
More than half of white evangelical Protestants in this country believe that you have to be a Christian to be a good American. And if you look up the word godless, I mean, you're without a God, right? You are an atheist. If you look up that word in the dictionary, one of the definitions is you are wicked, evil, and sinful. It is embedded in the culture that a person who does not believe in a God is wicked, evil, sinful. And we can see again why the QAnon stuff is attractive to a lot of these people. Oh, you have no God, then you have no moral center. You can't know right from wrong. You have no values, blah, blah, blah. And this sort of othering then makes it a whole lot easier because now, which party is going to promote God, family values? By the way, family values is a bullshit term that is rooted in a bullshit past that has been fabricated by people selling a bullshit story. I love your dog so much.
I just decided that it was time to show people a science dog. He's such a good little baby. Just a reminder, if you want to help me keep him vaccinated and all that good stuff, I have a Patreon in the show notes. Anyways, carry on.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing too. It's probably more critical than it's been in the past, where we're not able to do the conventions and stuff. If we're doing this full time, we always feel a little. This culture, the atheist movement, sometimes gets weird about money. You know, I tithed when I was in the church, and I'm like, well, the difference is that Cy Babe and I are not promising you intangible blessings.
Yeah,
somewhere.
We're just trying to. People are requesting Linus too.
Come here, pal.
Yay! We're gonna have it's a double dog day. It's a double dog day.
This is my son.
This is your son. This is Linus. Buddy, say hi to Linus. Buddy's like, no, I hear to give kisses. I hear to give kisses. Oh my God, he's so cute.
He came to us. We had just lost a couple of other dogs.
I remember
that. And we were like,
you guys got a van for the local animal shelter and
Humane Society. They're like, Gina at the Humane Society was like, we have your dog. We have your dog. I have your next dog. And we're like, we're not ready. We're not ready. We're too broken. It's too raw. We're not ready. And so a few days passed and we were talking, or we'll keep him for a day. And
sucker.
I mean, they just got us. And he made it impossible not to love him. And
the little ones just get into you. They bury into your soul. They're like, you're mine now, human. Like, buddy, I was handed him for a minute at a thing that the food babe. Oh yeah, remember her? That was a thing. When I had only had my site for 3 weeks, and she was in town to speak at the LA Green Festival. So I went, and I didn't get to see her talk, but I made fun of everyone who was selling like necklaces to ground you and bullshit like that. And the animal shelter was there, and they handed me this dog, and I drove back to my house, and I'm like, I'm not ready for a dog. And I looked online, and I'm like, it's been a year since I had my last dog, and I miss dogs, and they're like, dogs are on sale for $25 this weekend. I'm like, where is that shelter? So I drove 50 miles back the next day to go get this little pupper.
Hey, is Rennie Harry still around? Is she still food babing?
She is still like kind of doing her thing. Now it's funny because I've tried to drive home the point that all bullshits are kind of connected, right? And like I'm in the middle of scripting a thing about this. Like, she is same as a lot of the other bullshit artists trying to be like, here are things you can use to boost your immune system to save you from COVID. A healthy body will be fine against COVID. You fucking bitch. And sorry, did I say that out loud?
Does that make her she's a public safety hazard, really?
She's basically, and I mean, a lot of the people who, who I would debunk from years ago are just being like, here, take your vitamins. Like, here's your natural thing to help ward off the COVID. And like, no one's saying, here's your thing to treat COVID. They're saying, take all of our vitamins and you'll get an asymptomatic case. Like they have any way of guaranteeing that to their people. But yeah, she's been, I think she had, I don't know if it's a supplement or food line, but it's a line called True Vani. That's her. But like, I don't, at one point she, in order to launch the food line, she was doing a Kickstarter. I'm like, so you want people to give you money so you can sell them things eventually. Like you're not getting money from them for pre-orders. You're getting money to start the company because you haven't made millions on this fucking racket of yours already enough to start this. So
it's like, that preacher down in Florida, Rodney, I think it was Rodney Howard Brown, had a church service at the beginning of COVID, and he had told his parishioners that he had a machine that filtered COVID. It was like this magical machine that would keep everyone safe. I think he ended up being arrested over that for making false claims. And of course, part of me is like, well, if you have divine protection, why do you need a mechanism that would clear the air?
Yeah. Isn't Jesus here doing that?
Yeah, like, Jesus should clear the air.
Don't Jesus' lungs just work as a COVID? That's why I never caught a flu in church growing up. Never.
It's another reason why it's weird to watch the American gun culture tied to evangelical Christianity, because they believe they are divinely protected, right? God is counted. Even the hairs on your head are numbered. The Bible says, do not fear for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. No harm will come to you. Jesus talks a lot about the fact that you're under his watch. Why the fuck do you need an AR-15? Why do you lock your doors? Why do you put on a seatbelt? Why do you do any of these other things, these preventative measures? Security cameras? I got an evangelical neighbor just put in 5 security cameras. And I'm like, you believe God cares enough about you to watch over you with his divine eye. Why do you need 5 lenses and a hard drive to record what might be suspicious activity? It's a weird contradiction.
They'll both kind of go for they'll get the security system. They'll get their flu shots. They'll do all the things that, a person who understands how science works and how the world works. They'll do those things because they actually understand that this is bullshit, that the religion's bullshit, that they need the protection of things like walls and locks and vaccines and all of these things. But then when bad things happen to people who aren't them, that's when they'll say, well, God had a plan.
I think you're right. I think they're betraying, in terms of action, a tremendous lack of confidence in the God that they say cares. And yet when evil stuff happens to somebody else, we'll call evil everything. I mean, I'm just being broad with the term, a natural disaster or calamity or whatever. That's because God has removed his hedge of protection, or the Lord works in mysterious ways, or they've got a rationalization.
Yeah, nobody says the Lord works in mysterious ways when it's their infant that just died. Like that's not the comforting. Like no one's trying to comfort other people when the bad shit happened to them, and it's a quote act of God.
We're good at coping. I mean, human beings are really good at sort of finding ways to cope with all of the crazy shit in the world. And I think often that means making up stories. We construct, I think that's one of the reasons for the appeal of heaven, beyond the alleviation of the fear of, the idea that you would be reunited with those you lost, I think is people scared of death have created in their minds this idea that, well, when I go, there'll be a place where there's no pain and there's no crime and there's no poverty and only joy and bliss and harps and color and dogs and everything else, And it's so obviously now on the other side of the looking glass, it's so obviously constructed. We constructed it because it's part of our coping mechanism, because we don't like the idea of a temporary life. And I think that's an interesting observation. So.
Well, everything is temporary, even my forehead holding up. This is why there's Botox. Just saying, there are things we do to make it look like gravity has not hit us as hard as it has, as early as it has. it's funny. I've seen a lot of my girlfriends, like their grays have started to come in because look, we're just changing subjects all over the place, because they have not, been to their hairdresser. And I'm like, I did not realize how many people my age were gray already. This has been my surprise of COVID, my completely random. It's like, but also like I obviously like this was not a planned, the hair as it is right now this is just, I had bleach blonde hair and just have not cut it I've continued cutting it, but I've not updated the blonde since November. So there's about a year of growth, basically, is how that happened.
I saw a publicity photo from 2015 of me. I was using it for all of my stuff, and I think for the back of the book, and 2015 Sacred Cows. And
yep.
And I saw a recent photo, and I'm really noticing the gray. It's really a science fair project. Every day I look in the mirror, I realized, all right.
What color is that now?
It's kind of an ash brown. It's starting to change. I've got a couple of age spots coming in. I told somebody the other day, I try to think of it not as losing hair, but gaining face.
Look, you're just getting a place where you could, like, as is shown on the cover of your book, there's writing. Thank you. I'm like, if you don't do it, there's writing on someone's forehead, and you're just gaining a place where you can advertise your book.
It's like, it's weird. And when I was in my 20s, the idea of being 52 sounded like the moon. Like 52 would be like, I'd look like the crypt keeper in my head. I did.
I'm 37, and 37 sounds to me, what people hear when they hear 37? They don't hear that you're in their 30s, that you're in your 30s. They hear basically 40. That's all. That's your basic. Once, like, when you're 36, you are as in your 30s as you get, and when you hit 37, you are now 40.
Yeah, I look at me and I'm like, okay, Facebook filter, soft focus. Come on, let's round out everything.
Oh man.
But gray. Will I be gray? I don't know. It's the next 5 years. Time will tell. And then you have that conversation. All right, do I do like the old
color it? Do I not?
And then that's a trap. You start doing that, right?
I'm fairly lucky. Like it's as the blonde has grown out, I'm looking at, I'm like, all right, what's happening for gray? Fairly lucky, not that much of it. Just like, but it's funny because, like, wrinkles bother the shit out of me. I'm like, no, I'm falling apart. This is not okay. You can tell how much of my 20s I spent looking angry and confused. This is not acceptable. But like gray, I'm like, oh, this is neat. This is just like dying, but without all the chemicals. So
were you an angsty 20-something? Were you all angsty?
I think 20s was when I like, because I followed all the rules when I was a teenager. I was valedictorian of my high school class. I went to school on a full scholarship. 20s was when I was like, I'm mad at the world. Like, that was when I had my goth phase, was my early 20s. So got a lot of energy out.
Compared to you and so many others, my youth was just so freaking vanilla. I mean, I was just Mr. Clean. I don't have any stories,
I have some stories, but like, I think, I wonder if people think they're way crazier than they are, or if they're exactly as tame as they are. Like, cause like, I think, like, I joke that I could never run for office because of all the Roman orgies. And it's like, I think people think, look, it's not that there weren't Roman orgies. It's just that they're way less interesting than people think. It's like, you got to make sure that there's gluten-free dip for some asshole, like those kinds of, when you're planning for that many people coming over, you gotta, there's just planning and the scheduling alone. So like, what it really says about me, that this is on my resume, is that I'm a planner organizer.
This is a convergence of cultures right here, right? When you're watching universes that are just like, wow.
I just realized we have not had you. We haven't.
My idea of a wild night is like mixing in regular coffee with the decaf. Like all of these stories to me are like, wow, what was that like?
I was. Oh man, yeah. It's like I'm old, quote, old and lame now. Like not that I'm going out anywhere during the day, but like it's what do I do at night? I hang out with my husband at home. Like I had a very interesting 20s.
Yeah.
Interesting is the word we use for, it's like, wow, how did you get out of that without syphilis? Like that's what we're saying when we say interesting.
Well, we were talking, I remember we were talking to Natalie's daughter when she was a teenager. She's in her 20s now, but it was like you and I, and especially me, my generation, when you did something stupid or crazy or almost you almost died or you almost killed someone else by
Not
accident.
online.
It was like a story that you told at parties later. You were totally safe. You're like, holy shit, I shouldn't have lived through this, but guess what we did? And then all of a sudden, everything was like from your first day or the day you were born, everything's been chronicled on the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now when you go to a job interview and somebody Googles your name, whatever you did that was a dumb shit thing to do as a youth is now a matter of record.
I'm so glad that my dumber thoughts from when I was a teenager and early 20s are not just out there for record. Like, cause I don't think any of us are like, even like other than maybe Greta and Malala, like the rest of us all suck when we're teenagers. Okay. Those two are fine. Everyone else, you suck. But like, we all kind of suck when we're teenagers, and we are giving these small humans access to a way to give their thoughts to the universe, and their thoughts suck still.
Yeah.
Like, look, if you're a teenager watching this, I obviously don't mean you, dear. You're wonderful in anyways, but like I look at this and I think I would have been fucked. So like it would not have been good if there was always interweb when I was a teenager. Cause I got into some trouble.
I was confident. I remember taking the stage as I was like a darling of the church because a young man, nice, clean young man who is a representative of the faith, and they propped me up and had me as a teenager, and I'm standing on stage for youth.
Oh, were you a youth pastor? Were you like
I wasn't a youth pastor, but I was the nice young man. I was like, he's going to be. And of course, I look back now and I'm like, what did I know about the world? Like I knew nothing about anything. I was still learning who I was, and I hadn't traveled, and I couldn't even vote.
I think people don't know shit. I think that, and I've said this before, I think that you are who you are when you hit 27. And I think we should be allowed to give retroactive abortions until age 27. I think at 25, look, you don't get to abort the kid if right after they're born. But like at 25, if they're still a shithead and like causing misery for someone else, like if they're really a fucking awful person, like you get your kid. You get a 2-year warning to get your shit together, and then if they do not, they're getting the ultimate cancellation. It's for anyone out there who's ready to report me to the FBI. I swear this is.
You think about one thing about the Christian culture that talks about, and it's less these days, but the purity thing. Like sexual lust. So instead of giving into your lust and having premarital sex, you are encouraged very young to get married. And you got these people who are fresh out of high school and they jump into a marriage because if they have sex, if they give into their natural sexual desires and identity outside of marriage, that is a sin before man and God. And so I'm like, you have essentially people who don't know who they are yet, and they're sharing life in a space and intimacy and all this other stuff with someone who doesn't know who they are. It's just a recipe for freaking disaster.
Like everyone knows sex is between one man and one woman, specifically Ben Shapiro and his wife's dry ass pussy. I'm not going to stop making those jokes until Ben Shapiro pleases a woman, and he's never going to please a woman. So we're going to keep. I have to sneak in one every single.
Somebody explain that guy's popularity to me. I mean, I know why he's popular, but Jesus Christ, whenever I see a clip and think.
And here's the thing, you and I can break down his argument style because this is what we do. But I think a lot of people look at him and see his rapid fire. Oh, he's got a zillion questions. He has a lot of thoughts and they can't keep up. No, he fired off 37 questions. He does not actually want his opponent to answer them. He just wants people to see, I am a very smart person. See, I said a lot of things very quickly, so I'm very smart. He wants to get people to think that he's very smart by saying things very quickly. And then he doesn't want a response at all. If he wanted a response, he would ask one question and make it a good one. But he's not there to debate. He's there to fire hose with that information. Like that's what his whole bullshit thing is.
When I was online, I was tracking to see how my book was doing online and I was ranked for a very short time. I was ranked in the top 5 in new releases in politics and government. That lasted about 10 seconds. And then I'm now in oblivion.
It's longer than my book did. Of course, I don't have a book, so that.
Okay, all right. But I noticed Ben Shapiro has a best-selling book, and I look around and think we deserve the killer asteroid.
His audience has readers?
Yeah, he has a best-selling book, and he is
Wow.
popular, and he is being shared, and
His, I believe it's his channel is or not channel. His Facebook page is like one of the most shared and looked at. Like it has the highest engagement of like anything on Facebook. Basically, Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire run Facebook, and I believe it's either the Daily Wire or the Daily Caller, whichever one he runs, is a Facebook approved fact checker.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But someone mentioned in the chat that my book's out of focus. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I was doing this. It's okay. I'm not expecting anyone to actually buy the book. I just think it's funny to do this as I'm talking because I'm shameless. So.
I've got. I mean, I have a link to it to Amazon for it in the description. Hey, I want people to buy a book because I think telling the personal story as opposed to the like because there are a lot of atheist books that are like, let me tell you how to convert people, or let me tell you why you're already an atheist. Like, I like that you're telling your story.
Well, it's what I felt like it needed to do, and what it does is. First of all, I get into the origins of Fox News and how it became this essentially a branch of the Republican Party. And there are reasons for that. Like, and it goes back, it actually goes back to the Nixon administration. Yeah. Then we get into
just a quick interruption. Are we running over on time for you, or are you?
I'm good. I got it.
Cool.
Then we get into right-wing radio and how it's kind of a 1-2 punch with Fox. And then we get into all of the other sort of these wedge issues, whether it's the American gun culture, we get into the abortion debate, we get into American exceptionalism, the fact that we wave the banner that says we're number one while failing in almost every metric possible among first world nations. we get into all of these different things.
We're doing great compared to Somalia.
The gay agenda, I talk a lot about that. My own best friend, he'd come out to me as gay after we'd known each other for 10 years. I had no idea. And of course, I was an evangelical.
Oh, no.
And so we'd sort of talk about how that affected us and how I learned that I was the problem. I was being a bigot, and I had to evolve.
I mean, not good that you're a bigot, but good that you figured that out.
And then the final chapter, I feel like the responsible thing to do is to talk about, and a lot of people don't like this, but I think it's important for us to talk about extremists in our own camp. I think there are some people who wave the banner of the left who are actually damaging the causes that they supposedly are sort of battling for, because they're so extreme that they have sort of become dogmatic. And
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, please jump in. I'm just yammering on.
I think a lot of people that are the very far extreme left, the people that, like, here's the thing: the Republicans are going to they're going to try to characterize the entire left as as all being the exact same as the furthest craziest elements, even if the furthest craziest element is one guy.
Yeah.
And they're while at the same time trying to tell us that Donald Trump didn't mean the words that he said and means and is doing. So they are always going to try to push that perception that the worst element of your party is it, and try to be like, no, we're all upstanding young gentlemen, not people shooting people in the streets because it's fun.
It's so tiring. It's so tiring, to have. I mean, I know I don't trust Fox News, et cetera, to be arbiters of truth and facts and data. We know they're gonna jack with us anyway.
But it'd be nice if they at least stayed in this reality, Like I'm forgetting the name of it. There's this old it's parable, I guess. So you start off with a boat that's been built, and then you remove one plank and put a new one on, and you go around the boat and remove and when do you have a new boat? When you've taken all the parts off and put on new parts, when in that process is it a different boat? And I see this kind of thing happening with news stations, or with shall we say propaganda stations, where they'll take what happened and they'll replace, they'll do word replacement Mad Libs, where it's like, all right, this person got fired because they said something that was incredibly transphobic, and then the banner, the headline will be "Ship of Theseus." Thank you. That's the the thought experiment to which I was referring, the ship of Theseus. They'll start off by, whatever happened gets obfuscated in the language. It'll go from, they said something incredibly transphobic, attacked a few people at work, to they were fired for telling the truth. And that seems to happen a lot in these kind of propaganda ish in all of these kind of propaganda networks. And it's kind of watch out for the language and fact check everything, because they are going to kind of do this swap out a word until the headline looks like something that they can sell.
Does that, like if Trump says something that is racist and then the headline reads, Trump stokes controversy with, I don't know, where they sort of water it down, make it some sort of homogenized headline kind of thing?
I've seen even worse than that. Andy Ngo, who, as we all know, there was a lot of controversy about when he was hit with a milkshake a couple of years ago. Now he's someone who will take. He was fired from the first paper that he worked at, which was a student newspaper, for an article that was that had a lot of inaccuracies in it, to say the least. And Andy, in his retelling now, because he wrote an article that was like the first thing that like launched him into the public, or at least into Fox News's stratosphere, was an article that he wrote saying, I was fired for telling the truth. And if you just keep swapping words out until what happened isn't what you're presenting it as anymore. I'm trying to find, there were a lot of things that happened in Gamergate that they would be, this person got a good review for blowing someone. All right, this person never blew that person. They never actually got a review from them. There's a lot of this kind of stuff where they kind of try to swap words until the headlines look good for them.
The boat metaphor reminds me of that total digression. But in Star Trek, when you're transported and it kills the molecules and recreates them at location B, is that actually you, or is it someone else because it's a recreation of the molecules? That's a whole, when you did the boat thing, I was like, ooh, that's like the transporter metaphor a little bit, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Doug in the chat asked me if my book explains how evangelicals support Trump. Yes. In fact, I have a whole section in there that talks about the psychology. And this has been measured. We find trends among people who are politically conservative and this is globally, that their brains actually often work differently. Sometimes their amygdalas are even larger. They've actually noticed that the emotion centers of their brain are more reactive. And of course, fear is a powerful emotion.
So their brains do care about feelings very much.
I'm saying that often you will find, with many exceptions, but you will find trends that more than people who are politically liberal, conservatives are more tribal. They're more prone to routine. They don't travel as much. They are more germophobic. I mean, they are in many ways more receptive to sort of fear stimuli. So what happens when Fox News is running 24/7 and Donald Trump is stoking fears about the guy who's going to hurt God? This resonates with that specific demographic. It speaks to them. And so now you've got a vicious cycle because they feel both empowered as Christian nationalists, and they're also a victim as persecuted Christians. And that is just a feedback loop that never ends. But I get into that in the book Confessions. And, if you're interested, I get into that, I think, in chapter 2 and 3. So.
It's a couple people have already said they've downloaded it on Audible. Do you read the audiobook?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to let somebody else read my audiobook.
Look, I'm just saying, you're the only one who I'd ever trust other than me to read my audiobook if I ever,
I'm a little bit of a control freak. It's one, I know how I want it inflected. It's not that I have no other voice could read it, because I know there are tons of wonderful voice talents in this world. The other thing
is you come with this gift. This gift was factory installed, Seth. If you're not also doing voiceover work just because you're stuck at home and there's a microphone, this seems like a thing.
I knew that I want it punctuated this way. I know how it's supposed to say.
Could you lean into the microphone and say, "In a world"?
I have been asked. I started doing. You and I both are doing those cameo greetings now. And one of these days when somebody asks for a
if you
greeting,
guys want to book us on Cameo to send like a message to someone that like needs to be someone that needs to be told, or someone that's a fan of ours, we're both on Cameo. You can.
I'm not calling any, but most of mine are like birthday and anniversary greets. But one of these days, I'm going to do that, like in a world. We're going to do like the whole movie trailer greeting on Cameo. So that's going to be.
The one that I sent was to somebody who was posting, a friend of Steve Gadlin, who's a comedian friend of mine. He asked me to tell somebody that a bullshit video they posted about COVID was bullshit.
And so you sent it?
Yeah, I mean, he paid me. So I wasn't going to say no. That would have seemed rude.
That's got to be. That's a surgical strike, right? That that is one of those things where you
call in a scientist to be like, "Hey, you're wrong."
Like, here comes the truth grenade, and you've already moved on to the next battle. It's just like, awesome.
And off to another place in the internet where somebody's wrong. It was funny because I had, like, in the course of a week, I just had so many people ask, "Can you tell, like, I want you to go and argue with this person on this thread on my Facebook page." I'm like, I do that for money. And I said that jokingly. Somebody sent me $50 to go argue with their friends.
No shit. Well, what I get is, hey, would you read this book or would you watch this 3-hour video and comment on it and tell me what you think? And of course, when you're an activist who's producing content, there's a bandwidth issue anyway. I mean, when in the world do you find the hours, right?
The hardest part is you get a lot of things that come your way that you're like, oh, I'd love to fit this in if I had a 12-day week and a 30-hour day. And it's like there are so many projects that I get sent that I'm like, I would love to. It's just, this is not going to, I need to pay bills and this is not, but man, like there's, lots of stuff like that happens.
Or, I think it's not for lack of desire. I'd love to participate in that way. But for me, I have to deny or apologize because I cannot accommodate the so many of the requests that come my way. We just do what we can do.
We do what we can. It's
do what you can do.
That's it's a good motto.
That's a coda for living, my friends. Just wear it on a shirt. Do what you can do wherever you can do it.
Quoting Trump, it is what it is. Sorry.
It is what it is.
Couldn't help it. Anyways, I figure I have intruded upon your time for a while today, sir. Where can people find you and all of your things and your book? The link to your book on Amazon is in the description for this episode. Where can people find you other than that?
I host a podcast and website called The Thinking Atheist. I am not the thinking atheist. I'm the guy that took 30 years to figure out that donkeys cannot talk. I am not a great thinker. I am the thinking atheist is an icon that represents the rejection of faith when we're trying to figure out what's true. And I always like to throw that out. So I don't have the hubris to think that I am the thinking atheist. The thinking atheist is an idea. But I host a weekly podcast. We've got some goodies coming up. We're doing a show just with nothing but good news, just to remind ourselves the whole world doesn't suck. I'm doing a show on Jen Senko.
If there is an actual kitten being saved from a tree.
There's something along those lines, I think, makes it into the show. I'm talking to Jen Senko, documentary filmmaker for The Brainwashing of My Dad. She talks about how her dad got sucked into right-wing radio. We got ghost stories in October. God. We've got a lot of good stuff. So you can find it all at thethinkingatheist.com or my personal website, sethandrews.com, with my thanks.
Good times. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Can Gracie come and make a quick appearance, or are the dogs?
She is downstairs sleeping, I'm sure, on the top cushion of the couch. She sort of made that her spot. But she sends her love. And
the folks are animal enthusiasts here.
Go to my Facebook page. I'm posting Gracie photos and videos about every 30 seconds. So you can go to Seth Andrews on Facebook. You'll find dogs playing and puppy dog eyes and sweet fur and tummy rubs. It's all there. You can find it easy.
The videos are very, very cute. Thank you so much for hanging out with Seth. I will see you guys later. And it's a quick heads up. Because me stutter pretty today. Saturday is the patron only live stream. If you guys want to come and join that, of course it's a smaller crowd. Just me, you guys, and our animals, and maybe pants, maybe not. Go over to patreon.com/SciBabe. If you want to come on and join the party. Of course, my Patreon has one tier. It is $1, and that is all. The kind of, as I like to call it, a pay what you can subscription service, or pay what you can optional subscription only service. I think that's it. Anyways, yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out. And thank you again, Seth, for coming on the show. And I will see you guys later in the week. Bye-bye.